Namaste. Welcome to this video, the 17th overall and the 4th in the sub-series and introduction to Sanatana Dharma. Why do I have Nataraja in the background? You'll get to understand as I go a little ahead. So I wish all of you a very happy new year 2021. Let me start with a small, let's say, sidetrack, so to say. Hinduism, Ishvara is considered to be time, right? Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita as well. The reason I'm saying this is, see, there's a lot of abuse that I think I've seen, and I'm sure people have done that for the year 2020, the year which has gone past. For Hindus, Ishvara, time is actually a form of Ishvara, Kala, Mahakala, whatever deity you want to ascribe it to. Uh, Time is ultimately a form of Ishvara. So, abuse of time is abuse of Ishvara, so to say. Also, let's think about it this way: 2020 was not a very good year for humankind, obviously. At the same time, look at it from the Earth's perspective. So many people have been staying at home. Imagine the amount of healing that nature went through. So that way, uh, Ishvara, Kala is a form of Ishvara. So let's not abuse Kala. Let's get into today's video. Let's start with a recap of what we had discussed earlier. We discussed about Ishvara, Bhagavan, Parabrahma, that Parabrahma is time and space, and and in fact, everything. But we do not perceive this reality because of our state of avidya, which is due to Maya. Now, let us look at what Ishvara does. The core activities, let's say, of any deity in Hinduism are three. Whichever Vedic deity we look at, we spoke about six core Vedic deities. Now, irrespective of which form we look at, there are three core activities: Srishti, Sthiti, Laya, creation, sustenance of what has been created, and commonly something called destruction, but it is something called Laya or merger. Why is this called merger? Because whatever creation has come forth from Parabrahma or Ishvara is taken back into him or her. Because of this, it is called Laya or merger, or let's say in our colloquial words, it's called destruction. Now, to this list, we can actually add two more. One is something called Tirodhanam, and second is something called Anugraham. What do these two things mean? Now, at the end of, let's say, certain cycles of creation, Hinduism says that there is something called pralaya, or where the entire creation is inundated with water, and creation ends. Everything is taken into Ishvara. At this point, and after, obviously, when the next cycle of creation starts, everything is again brought forth. Right now, imagine that we will talk about obviously the concepts of karma and all at a later point of time. Now, when creation starts, there is a certain memory that exists of the way things were, and things are brought back accordingly, right? So if I have certain, let's say, backlog of karma, that doesn't go away just because of pralaya. Ishvara remembers that, and when there is the next cycle of creation, uh, I or my jiva is born according to my earlier karmas. So this preservation of memory and this bringing it back is one set of meanings for Tirodhanam and Anugraham. Apart from that, Tirodhanam and Anugraham can also mean something a little different, very specifically bondage and liberation. What that means is, as long as the jiva, the living being, does not reach a state of realization through whatever means, that jiva continues to exist in samsara. There is let's say a vast number of rebirths, so bonded to samsara. That is tirodhanam. And if that jiva attains liberation or mukti, then anugraham is what Ishvara shows and liberates that particular being. So srishti, sthiti, laya, core activities. Tirodhanam, anugraham are two, let's say, supplementary or related activities as part of the earlier three. Now let us look at two symbolic examples. And this is where my wallpaper comes into the picture. Now, Nataraja, obviously it's a very famous image. Now, if you look at the image, there are a couple of things that Nataraja holds. Let's first look at Srishti. The sound that the Dhamaruka that Nataraja holds is the sound of creation, that is Srishti. Sthiti, you see that there is a hand like this, right? Abhaya Mudra, do not fear, Abhaya Mudra, that is Sthiti. Then Nataraja also holds fire in his left hand. That basically signifies Laya, destruction or merger. Then now you can also say, where are Tirudhanam and Anugraham, right? Now, this image actually has all five. Srishti, drum; Sthiti, Abhayamudra; Agni is the Laya aspect of the Murti. Then you see that there is the left palm being shown to the left foot. That basically says, he who takes refuge in me, I will provide Anugraha. Then you also see that the demon is called Apasmara. I think it means wrong memory or incorrect memory, what is not to be remembered, right? Basically, we remember the world, we do not remember Ishvara. That way, Apasmara is the demon that is under his right foot. So that is Tirodhanam. And he's showing his palm to his foot and saying that he who takes refuge in me has my Anugraha. That way, that is the symbology associated behind the Murti of Nataraja. It is not a simple, beautiful image. There's a beautiful set of meanings behind this particular image. Now, let's look at one more example. For those who remember, this is actually the image of a talcum powder box, Gokul Santol. I am not promoting the product. I am more interested in that image in the center. So, a sage named Markandeya is said to have seen Krishna in this particular form floating over the Pralaya Jalas. Pralaya Payodhi Jale, I think that's one term used by Jayadeva in one of his songs. So the waters that existed after Pralaya, so this Rishi, Markandeya, he was just looking at things, and over those waters he saw Narayana come floating on that water on a banyan leaf. That's why it is called Vatapatra Shai, he who is sleeping on a banyan leaf. That is the way Krishna appeared to sage Markandeya. So basically, what the child is doing, the child Krishna is doing, is he's holding his right foot to his mouth using his hands. This is a very, in fact, if you see a small enough child, you will probably see the child doing this, sucking the toes, right? There is a symbology behind this as well. This particular image of Vatapatra Shai, not Google Santa. I just took the image. The hand signifies creation. We do things with our hand, right? So we have hand in a lot of things. So the hand signifies creation. The foot is what we use to walk. That signifies sthiti or sustenance. And mouth, where Ishvara takes everything back in, signifies laya or destruction or merger. That is the symbology of the Vatapatra Shai Rupam. Okay. So we have two indicative examples of what Ishvara does. Going ahead. Now, Hinduism does not say that Ishvara is jealous or vengeful. In fact, one of the defining aspects of Hinduism has this concept of Navarasas. Let me not get into that right now. I am not also very well read on that topic at this point of time, but one of those rasas is Shanta Rasa, calm, peace. That is one of the defining aspects of Ishvara in Hinduism, not jealousy, not vengeance, is a witness. Like the Vishnu Sahasranama has this word, a nama called Sakshi, Sarvadarshi, is a witness to everything that happens, is neutral and acts as karma phala pradata, basically bestows the fruits of our actions. So if I enjoy the fruits of something, or if I suffer the fruits of something, that something is something that I have done. Ishvara does not say, okay, let me add something extra from my end. No, he basically looks at what I have done, what I am doing, and whatever I get or whatever I will get is a direct result of that karma, a very famous concept in today's world, right? And yeah, that's another thing. Karma is a bitch. No, karma is basically what we have done. So it is wrong to blame karma. If you are blaming karma, you're basically blaming yourself. So do not blame anybody. It is I who am responsible for what I am today. Okay, I don't need to blame somebody else for that. That way, oh, again, Ishvara is said to, we say that, right? Ishvara is all loving, merciful. Where does that concept come in here? He is merciful, he is kind. Again, if I look at the Vishnu Sahasranama, there is a shloka where Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. By the way, yogakshemam vahamyaham is the motto of the Life Insurance Corporation. That means yogakshemam, let's simply put it as welfare. Yogakshemam vahamyaham, I take care of the welfare. That is what the LIC motto is. It is taken from the Bhagavad Gita or the Vishnu Sahasranama. I understand the shlokas there in both. It basically says those who ananyas chintayantaha mam ye janaha paryupasate. Without ananyas chintayantaha, without thinking of anything else, mam, me, ye janaha paryupasate, who worship or adore me without thinking of anything else, tesham nityabhyuktanam. Uh, I think it basically means for them who are ever in union with me, yogakshem vahami. Uh, so those who adore or worship me without thinking of anything else, I take care of their well-being. That way, uh, what I mean by that cow and calf example is the Ishvara is said to run behind a bhakta the way a cow runs behind its calf. We just need to say that. We just need not just say. We need to actually experience that. If I am a devotee, Ishvara will take care of my welfare. If I am not a devotee, God does not say, I will take my vengeance on you that you do not worship me. No, He simply says, okay, you've done XYZ. You will get the benefits or the ill effects of that XYZ. Now, if I take refuge in Ishvara, then He kind of intervenes and does something to alleviate that suffering to an extent, let's say, or to give me a little more than what I actually deserve. This is what Ishvara does according to Hinduism. He does not do something of his own volition, just like that. Whatever he does is because of something that I have done, or because I have actually taken refuge in him and say, please help me, or please help me to get something, or please help me to get rid of something. Okay. Now, this basically brings me to the end of today's video. Let me stop at this particular juncture. So let me reiterate that sloka from the Vishnu Sahasranamam. Ananyaha chintayantaha mam ye janaha paryupasate tesham nityabhyuktanam yogakshemam ahamyaham. Those who take refuge in me without uh, caring about the world or without being immersed in the world, I take care of their welfare. And just summarizing, Ishvara does three primary things: Srishti, Sthiti, Laya. And as part of this, also does Tirodhanam and Anugraham, which basically refer to bondage and liberation. Thank you for watching this video. This sub-series is probably going to continue for one or two other videos. Then we will move on to the other topics. In the next one or two videos, we will be talking about where Ishvara is. There is something called the Narayana Suktam. We will talk about that in the next video. And in possibly the last video, we will be talking about the concept of Vishwarupam, which is unique to Hinduism. Thank you for watching this video. Namaste.